All right, it is Thursday, December 12th. Yeah, I'm not usually at work on Thursdays, but we had a little holiday thing, and then I had meetings after work, so it's like almost quarter after 6 right now on a Thursday, which is kind of crap. And it says there's a crash on the way home, which is perfect, but we're going to head to Reddit for a topic. I think this one's interesting, and the topic, I'm not going to read the comments, I'm just going to read what this person's question is. So let me get it out here. It says, how do you gauge if a remote employee really does need help versus sandbagging or overemployed and just lying? So they say it's not like you just ask and he tells the truth. I've seen this happen already with the previous one. Little to no communication, not being transparent with progress, very rare commits, etc. And something's going on with my my throat. I don't have a sore throat. Sinuses are clear, but today I've been noticing I go to talk and I get like a tickle in my throat. So I apologize. But I think this is going to be an interesting one. So basically effectiveness of remote employees, and I want to kind of look at this in a couple of different ways. So we'll dive into that. It says it's going to be an hour to get home, but I it better not be. Okay, so before that, just a friendly reminder for folks: if you want me to answer your questions, leave them in the comments. You can get your stuff answered if you comment, and I don't have to go to Reddit. And if you want something more specific answered, and it's not going to be good for a comment, and you want it to be anonymous, just message me. Look for Dev Leader on social media, on any platform you want. Send me a message. More details means I have more context. So happy to answer that. And a friendly reminder as well, because I don't promote my own stuff enough, but just launched a soft skills course on Dome Train. So this is the third entry for sort of career progression and career-related development on Dome Train. So happy to launch that with Ryan Murphy. So yeah, if you want to check that out, it's a lot of the stuff that I talk about when I'm doing these conversations, you will see come up in that course and all of the courses that I make related about career stuff. It's just that when I'm talking in the car, it's a stream of consciousness, and in a course, it's going to be a lot more polished and organized. So if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's cool. I'm just letting you know it's there. So with that said, let's talk about remote employees and effectiveness. Prior to Microsoft, and so I got to give you background, right, so that you can understand my biases and things like that. I think that it's unfair if I start blabbing about stuff and try not to give you the background so that you understand my biases, because as I talk, I can't constantly be saying, I have this bias. So let me frame it up for you. Prior to Microsoft, I worked basically with only in-person employees. The company I was at did have a satellite office that was open for a few years before I left, but it's not a different time zone, and it was a fully staffed office. It's not like just remote employees. So I never had remote employees prior to Microsoft. And when I started at Microsoft, I started with remote employees as well as local employees, but the entire team worked remote. The entire team, right? So I even started remote. And technically I am a remote worker still. It's just that I do some hybrid stuff on this current team that I'm on. So I have been a remote worker too. So I was managing a remote team while being a remote manager myself, right? So, but that experience for me is only the past 4.5 years. And the prior 8 years of my management experience has been in person. So the other bias or thing that I want to call out here is I was at a small, a startup that grew into a mid-sized company before Microsoft. And Microsoft is infinitely larger. So there's this different dynamic too around what the company is like. So if you have only worked in a startup or big tech or whatever, the thing that I want to call out is from my own experience, startup world and small company world is much faster. Okay. And when I say much faster, I mean like it feels like there's constantly stuff ongoing. And it feels like in big tech, it's not that you're not working, it's just that there are things and other processes that we have to factor in because we're doing things at a larger scale, especially with respect to development teams. So it's no longer just acceptable all of the time that you can just push code and have some like one person on your team review it kind of thing. You might have to incorporate other teams, getting them to sign off on things. Like there's just things that happen at a larger scale that can take more time. I don't think it's a great excuse for everything in big tech or why some things move slow. So I'm not trying to, give it a free pass, but I think that there's just things that naturally happen slower in big tech in comparison. So these are a couple things I want to call out. My relative newness to remote work and the fact that it is in big tech where the majority of my experience so far in my career has been at a small company. Okay, so what's a good way to start breaking this down? I actually think maybe this is worth like having a bit of a preface here that without having concrete evidence, I feel like I've maybe in my whole career, I've had, could count on one hand with a couple of fingers to spare, maybe, people that I felt like were sandbagging and like not delivering. In person, I used to have this employee, and like I'm not going to say his name, and I'm going to describe him, and I could tell you people that if anyone that I used to work with was around when this person was there, they'll know who I'm talking about. And it's like this is just the reality of it. This person used to sleep at their desk. So they would be at work and just like asleep. Not and not like not I stayed up all night working on stuff, so I fell asleep at my desk. But like I wasn't doing anything at my desk and fell asleep. So, I've had a person like that, which is pretty uncomfortable because it's pretty obvious like something's going on. And I don't know, maybe it could be any number of things in reality, but the product of that is like, not output. It's not good growth for their career. It's not productivity. It's like there's a lot of not good stuff happening in that circumstance. I've talked before about people focusing on the wrong things, let's say. So that was a sort of recent video I did. So it's not that they're not working, it's just their focus is on the wrong thing. So productive, yeah. I've definitely experienced people that do a really good job communicating remotely and some that are very hands off. So these are some elements, but honestly, in terms of like, I have this feeling that people aren't getting stuff done. It's felt like a very rare thing in my experience. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I'm not here to say it's impossible that someone could just be like, great, I got this remote job, I'm going to slack off. It's absolutely possible that people would do this, okay? But my experience has been that it's not the common thing. And this is why I find it, and this has been my experience, so it's why I find it funny that when people are so adamant that like remote work is just like, is only going to be people slacking, I'm like, are you really optimizing for what feels like to me like a very rare case, and all of your energy is going into preventing this? Maybe other people have had the completely different experience. Maybe there's stats on it that show I'm talking bullshit and like the majority of remote workers truly are slacking or something. Sorry, I got to move over lanes here. So maybe, but my experience has definitely been it's rare. It's at least rare that I feel like people are slacking or not working or whatever. So that's important to get out of the way, because I think that when I go into these situations and I'm managing remote employees, my my initial like instincts and how I approach this stuff is not, how do I make sure that I am keeping tabs on them at all times, because otherwise they're going to be trying to scam me or trying to pull the wool over my eyes. Like that's not what I'm after, because it historically hasn't been a thing that I like need to be hyper focused on. And I guess the way that I would frame this stuff up is like when I go to approach these situations in terms of managing remote employees, it's like I'm in sync with them. So like my goal is not to put them on the spot to be like, hey, like I don't think you're working, prove it to me. But instead it's more like, how can I make sure that you're being effective? Right? My conversations with people I try to make sure are, how can I make sure that you're being effective? And I think the narrative around that, like how it's being said, is just a different approach. The outcome that you might want is perhaps the same. Like, I want my employees to be productive. I want them to be productive. I want them to be engaged. I want them to do good work. But I don't think that, for me, in the way that I manage people and my experience, I don't get that by saying to people, like, prove to me that you're getting your work done. Because they already are doing that. I don't need like a one-on-one meeting for that. I'm able to see what they're delivering on because we have sync meetings. I can see what's happening, what's being delivered. But let's get into some of these other thoughts, right? So if you, like, for example, if the mechanism that you're using for seeing people kind of deliver on their work is going to be sync meetings, maybe you do them once a week, or maybe it's a stand-up or something. If the person's not even showing up, right? So they're just like totally absent. And then you're messaging them and you're like, hey, like we haven't talked in like a week, or they're missing their one-on-ones and stuff. Like these are some signals that I would get where I'm like, like what's going on here? But what's funny, I think it's kind of funny. What's funny for me is like my gut instinct is not, oh, I bet they're just slacking. I bet this person is trying to trick me. Like my first instinct is like, is this person okay? Like, should I have a like, is there something we should be talking about, that they got something going on at home or what? Like, is there some way I can help here? So maybe that's not how all managers approach this, but my go-to in that situation is not, oh, this person's being a sneaky bastard. Like, no, it's like, should we be talking about something going on here? Now, if we have a conversation, right? So say I haven't, and without getting into details, I have observed this type of thing in real life. So this isn't pardon me. This has been happening all day, where I go to say something and then just like start like choking almost. I have had conversations with people where it's like, hey, like, haven't seen you at the sync meeting, or one-on-ones. It's like they're canceling them like last minute, or like while the one-on-one is happening, like, oh, sorry, can't make it today. So then when I do get a chance and I'm like, hey, like, what's up? Like, like, is everything okay? Like, anything we should be talking about here? And the response ends up being something like, I'm not getting into specifics, but it ends up being like kind of dismissive. Like, oh no, everything's great. Yeah. Like, just whatever, like kind of nonchalant, I guess is the way that I would describe that. Especially given that I feel like any employee that I've spent time working with, I put a lot of time and effort into building trust and respect. And I feel like I can say this pretty confidently that, at least the overwhelming majority of employees I've had feel like they can trust talking to me about stuff. Because I've had some people tell me some shit where I'm like, not that I'm bothered by it, but I'm like, I am so amazed that you actually do trust me that much with, personal life and stuff like that. which I think is I think it's cool. Like they actually trust me. So I've had conversations with individuals like this where they're just nonchalant, and it's like, oh, like, yeah, it seems like it's not a big deal to them that they're missing the team meetings or that they're missing our one-on-ones and not communicating it. And it's like, okay, like I start to get a bit of a bad feeling from that. And usually it's associated with like things slipping too. Okay, so this has happened. It has happened more than once. And even though it's a limited number of times, it seems like there's been a correlation in my experience where I'm like, yeah, that feels like maybe this is going on a little bit longer than it should. And this person happens to be kind of dodging some stuff. And those are situations where, like, realistically, there needs to be a conversation, right? So it needs to be like level setting expectations, because what ends up happening is in those situations, especially like at Microsoft, when I'm working through rewards, promotions, when I'm coaching people, like what is going to be beneficial for people in their career progression is demonstrating impact. And if time is elapsing and people are not delivering anything and they're missing out on the team meetings and the one-on-ones, like, I don't know how you're going to demonstrate impact. And like, as a manager, I'm not going to make up your impact. Like my job is to make sure that you can do your best work possible. You still got to do the work. And if you're not showing up to things, like, I just don't know how you expect that's going to happen. It's like, I can't even help you if you're not showing up. So these are situations where I do need to level set expectations and say, hey, look, like, in terms of impact, like, there's, we're missing this, right? And it's usually pretty clear to be able to say, like, in terms of what's been delivered, there isn't anything to show for it, or very minimal, right? And it's like, the impact speaks for itself, especially when it's completely not there. But level setting expectations is important, because when we go into conversations like this, and I will tell you that I have had conversations like this with employees, and I'm saying, hey, look, like, we've been chatting for a little while about things getting delivered, hasn't really been happening, seem kind of absent, and I'm trying to have conversations like, hey, what's up? When we start getting pretty real about like this is affecting your ability to deliver and demonstrate impact, like, what's up? Like, I want you to know that I'm here to help. Like, what's up? I have had people tell me a bunch more where they're like, hey, like, this is what's going on. I've had people say completely transparently, they're like, I know that I'm not performing at the level that I think is like what I'm capable of, and here's why. Basically, like, this full recognition of like, yeah, like, I totally see that, like, what I've been doing is not up to par. But it's important to level set the expectations, because if I don't, someone will just continue doing what they're doing, going, I guess this is okay. And the reality is it's not. It's not okay. But they need to have that conversation with me so that I can level set the expectations. And then part of that is not me going, and therefore you better be scared or else I'm going to fire you. The conversation is like, so now you understand the expectations. I'm going to be working with you on making this better, right? Like, help me help you. I got to move over lanes here. Finally. Okay. So for me, like, back to this person's question on Reddit, right? It's like, there's sometimes signals that people seem very disconnected, but I don't jump into, I bet they're trying to trick me. When I observe the signals, I try to make sure I have conversations with them. Hopefully I've been doing a good enough job building up the trust and respect so that they're able to have open conversations with me. You'll hear me constantly say this, not coughing, I mean, the trust like building up trust and respect, building that rapport with your team as an engineering manager is so important, because it's almost impossible to do anything else effectively if you don't do that. And if you're not an engineering manager, I want you to think about this too, right? Like that relationship from a trust and respect perspective that you form with your manager can do a lot, right? So if you're feeling like, hey, like, it's really hard for me to trust or respect my manager, either it's something you want to work on with them, or if you're like, it's impossible with this person, I've been trying, or, they don't make themselves available for that kind of working relationship. Like, feels like anytime I talk to them, they're going to punish me for something. Like, that might be an indicator you're not working for a good manager. And unfortunately, no matter how hard you try at it, it's like kind of going to be a dead end for you. So just a heads up, because I think that I've heard people talk about, I'll say things about how my management or leadership style is, and people will be like, why? This car's beeping at me because it thinks everyone's about to pull out in front of me. No one's pulling out in front of me, car. Stop it. But I've had people say, like, that's not how my manager is, or like, that's not how managers are. And I'm like, yeah, I hate to tell you, but that's how they should be, I think, if they're doing a good job. So instead of you saying, like, oh no, that's not how managers are, what I would suggest to you is try to go find one. Stop settling for working for shitty managers, because other people are leaving them. Other people are going to find people that they enjoy working for. I get that it's not as easy as just saying it out loud, but I'm trying to seed the idea in your head that if you're like, I hate the person I'm working for and I feel like I'm at a dead end, no matter what I try, and I have been trying, okay, maybe it is a dead end. Right? It's something to think about. So, sandbagging, I think, is less common from my experience. A conversation I like to have with my employees, and this is a bit of a unique thing at Microsoft, I would say, at least the space I'm in, between my current team and my last team, there's some changes and things that we work on that they take significantly longer than like the actual, say, the code change that has to happen. Maybe that actually takes someone a day, or maybe it's like over 2 days and like a third day to make sure reviews are wrapped up and stuff. So like the actual dev effort that goes into the code part is from like 1 to 3 days or something. But in order for that entire thing to be delivered and completely finished, that can be on the order of weeks. Okay, so when you have work like this, like, I'm not a huge fan of stacking up parallel work. And I'm not a huge fan of that, because I think with too much context switching, you really start to get distractions, you lose effectiveness. There's a lot of crappy things that would happen with too much context switching. But if there isn't some context switching in this case, what ends up happening is people like get something done and then they have to go roll their changes out and they're like, I don't have anything to do. Like, I already checked the next, set of machines I need to be looking at. Everything's good. We got to wait a little bit before we go and expand further. There's only so many machines I can keep checking. Like, what else to do, right? So this is a common thing, like I said, that happens. And what gets to be a really interesting sort of challenge is, like, yeah, it would be nice if I could snap my fingers and everyone on the team could triple up how much work they're doing and not feel overwhelmed. Of course. Of course, that would be awesome. But the reality is, we can't just do that, because people are going to get overwhelmed. They're going to get distracted. They're going to get overwhelmed. Or quality's going to drop. There's going to be some type of compromise. So the conversation I have with people is around their working capacity. And it's very situational, because not only will it vary from individual to individual in terms of their actual capacity and style of work, their level, the current projects they're working on. But the conversation I like to have with them is around like, hey, look, like I'm not going to do this properly because I'm trying to do it off the top of my head, but it comes down to like being busy at work is actually a good thing. Not being overwhelmed, but being busy is good, because when you have nothing to do at work, for those of you that are, haven't entered the industry yet, if you have nothing to do at work, I can tell you that I feel like if you're into software development and you have nothing to do, it's not an enjoyable experience. It might sound cool, like, oh, you can get paid to do nothing. Yeah, but you're going to go crazy. I would think for most people I've talked to about this, being bored at work is not a good spot to be in. Maybe some people are bored at work and they're finding other stuff to do to not be bored that's not work related. Okay. Now you're not bored and you're getting paid. That's cool. But like, I feel like you probably want to pick a career that pays you well and you're not bored. So the conversation I have with people is around their working capacity, and I'll say like, hey, it sounds like you're at this point where stuff's getting pushed up or you're blocked on this other thing waiting for someone. Do you feel like you have capacity for this other thing? And I try to make it clear to them that my goal is not to rush them through things. It's a pretty rare circumstance that I've had where it's like, hey, this thing came up and like urgent priority, right? And if it is, I'm having a conversation, this other thing, like you can drop that for now because it's not comparatively a priority. But in these situations, it's like, if you have capacity for this other thing, like, I think it might be a good idea for you to pick it up so that you're not sitting idle. And basically this usually pans out in like two ways. One way is like, oh, absolutely, yeah, like I think I could totally take on a thing like that. And we can balance, this is a really nice opportunity to balance things like design. So that thing's going to need a design doc for it. You can spend some time doing that. Or I know you're already doing some design, so this is something that you can actually go land some code quick, and like that's going to kind of scratch some other itch. This is something that you can help someone else out with. So like, here's some different career growth opportunities. It's a really cool way to try and carve some of these things out. But generally people are either like, oh yeah, I'm ready for something like that. That's cool. Or they say, good point. I need to let me follow up with you. I just want to check this very next step and potentially I'll be ready, but I might also find out that this other thing's unblocked now and I can continue on with that. And I have personally found this to be the two common options that come up, and it works really well because someone will follow up with me and say, yep, like that thing got unblocked. I'm back to being super busy. This is good. Or that thing is still blocked. What was that thing you were talking about that you wanted me to help with? And we get them set up. Or we're in the meeting together and they're happy to jump on the next bit of work right away. So I like those types of conversations around work capacity and making sure that people feel like they're busy with engaging work that's valuable. And if they're already at capacity, there's no point in trying to overload them. Now, as a manager, I've had this funny situation where people have been asking for work, right? And they're asking for work in some situations because they think the expectation is they need to be doing more things. And then we dig into it a little bit more and it's like, hey, you actually might be taking on too much right now. And you might be rushing through it. And my expectation with you is not that you're doing more things, but you're doing things with better quality, more consistently. So actually, no, I don't want you to take on more. I would like to see you get these things wrapped up. So that's another thing that can come up too. But that's sort of one thing that I like to tackle is around this idea of your working capacity. What else are they saying? Basically, yeah, people sitting idle. In general, I think one part of this question was around communication and stuff, right? I think this morning's drive, so depending on the order that you watch these in, you might have already watched it. If not, you can go back and watch that too. But I think this morning's drive and other videos, I've talked about this idea where, especially with remote work, right? It can be challenging to make sure that people feel comfortable reaching out, asking for help. So, to give you an example, I have dealt with some individuals where I was talking about these signals, right? Where I'm like, it kind of like gives me this feeling that someone's not getting stuff done. And when I dig into it, this is especially the case with, from my experience, at least with really junior developers or interns. So people that don't have a lot of work experience, and they're remote, and I'm getting these signals they're not getting stuff done. And what ends up happening is that it's because they're like keeping themselves blocked. So when it comes to communication, they're not actually actively communicating. So the video that I did on Code Commute this morning was around how can developers sort of help more junior engineers, and the focus on not just giving them answers, but like kind of coaching them through stuff. So I talk about a lot of this stuff in that video, but the idea here being like, when I've had conversations with these individuals, I end up kind of uncovering like they're getting stuck a lot. And then I'll go, oh, like, did you reach out to so-and-so? And they're like, well, no. Okay, well, why? And it's like, well, I didn't want to bother them. And I go, oh, well, we've talked about that, right? Like, they actually want you to ask for help. Yeah, no, okay, yeah, I should do that. I should do it. And then, great, in my head, I'm like, great, okay, they're going to correct this behavior. And then they don't, right? And then so, a couple days go by and I'm like, hey, like, what's up? Oh, yeah, like, I still haven't. And then I go, okay, like, we got to change something here. So it's hard because part of me wants to demonstrate or prove to these individuals, like, that their teammates do want to help them, right? I think people get very concerned about not bothering other individuals, which I can understand. They want to be respectful of their time. But what's happening is they're staying blocked for so long and not communicating to anyone. So in these cases, I try to remind people, hey, look, like, if that person is busy, or you're like, hey, I don't want to bother them, I'm like, here's one or two other people that you could be talking to. Maybe you can rotate between them so you feel like you're not bothering them. I'll try to find ways to say, I can say it a million times, like, that person said they actually want you to reach out. Doesn't seem to actually do anything. I remind them they can reach out to me, right? Like, I'm literally having a conversation with you about this now. I would be very happy to help you. Just let me know. Send me a message, right? If you're not sure if I'm busy, just send me a message. I'll get back to you as soon as I'm out of a meeting. I will read it. We can talk about it. So I try to create as many options as I can, right? But ultimately, if people aren't acting on those, and sometimes this could be a comfort level, could be people's personalities and stuff, but if they're not acting on them, it legitimately starts to hold them back. Because what's happening is they stay blocked. Going back to what the signals of that look like, is it looks like someone's just sandbagging. It looks like they're just not getting work done. Because that's the outcome of it, right? They're stuck on something. You see no progress. Even if they show up to the stand-up meeting or the sync meeting, what's your update? Oh, well, I'm still working on this. Well, haven't you been working on that for a week? Yeah. Okay, well, are you blocked? Well, yeah. And it's like, oh, man, like, why? Why are you still blocked on this? Like, we've already talked twice this week about this. So it ends up looking like people are sandbagging, or they don't care, but it's actually a different root cause. So same symptom that you might observe, but different root cause. And I've actually seen in some cases where if we can build some momentum with these individuals and they go, oh shit, like, now I'm starting to feel like I have some productivity, things can shift gears a little bit. So to give you an example, can I move? No, this guy's flying past. Come on, buddy. We build some momentum with these individuals, and it kind of feels like a step backwards, right? It's like, okay, we might have a sync meeting once a week or whatever. Okay, we're going to be doing this every other day. We're going to do it every day. We're just going to touch base briefly. And what ends up happening is that there's this forcing function where it's like, look, basically I've given you a bunch of opportunities to reach out and ask for help, and you're not doing it. And there can be any number of reasons, including literally just not feeling comfortable. I get it. Okay, so my goal is not to say shame on you, you should feel bad, because that's not my job. My job is to try and make you feel effective in your work. So, cool, I need to meet with you every day, or your onboarding buddy is going to meet with you every day if it's not me. Great. You now have a forcing function that's going to make you at least once a day talk to someone about what you're stuck on. And what we found happened from doing this in more than one instance is that these individuals start to realize, oh shit, if I just ask for help, if I just talk to these people, I can make progress. And it seems ridiculous, right? Because the entire time they weren't reaching out, and now we force them to meet every day, right? You're uncomfortable reaching out because you don't want to bother people. Okay, every day you're forcefully bothering someone now. And the other person agreed to it, right? Or if it's me, I've agreed to it. You're not bothering us. We're totally okay with it. We were expecting that you were going to be bothering us every day, right? We expected that you were going to reach out to us every day, and you weren't. So it's in your calendar now. You got to meet with us every day. And every day they come with something where they're stuck. They've made progress beyond the last point, but now they're stuck on something else. Well, great, cool, let's talk through it. And what ends up happening over a period of time is that we don't need to continue that. So your mileage may vary, obviously, like everything in software engineering. It depends. Situational. But what we've observed, at least what I've observed, is that when we do this, it gives someone some momentum. And they have it proven to them people do want to help. It's not like, oh, I know you say that, but it's, nah, you said it and you're living it and it's working. Okay, right? It's been demonstrated to me now. So you can kind of pull back on the meeting cadence and do it slowly so you can see that they're still reaching out, right? So they're still reaching out for help. They're still keeping up their momentum. Cool. You can keep kind of dialing it back. Get back to your, like if it was already like a weekly, one-on-one or sync like that, you might be totally fine to get back to that. But I wanted to share that kind of perspective because, like I said, the symptom of looking like someone's sandbagging or they're underqualified or something, honestly, I've seen very smart people that are very capable literally screw themselves over because they're getting stuck on something that I would expect them to get stuck on, and they just don't ask for help. So sometimes people, they hear what you're saying around like it's okay to ask for help, but it could be any number of their own personal experiences, whatever it happens to be, where they have a really difficult time believing that, trusting it, whatever, so they don't act on it. So putting some type of forcing function in place can help turn that around. But yeah, I think that's been mostly my experience. I'm almost home, so I'm trying to think if there's some closing thoughts I can add to this. But essentially, it's like, I think the overwhelming majority of times in my experience is that people are willing to work hard, remote or not, right? They're willing to do it, and there are some signals I get when people aren't showing up to things or being, feels like they're very flaky and nonchalant about stuff, and I'm not seeing progress on stuff, where I have to start leaning in and saying, hey, what's up? But that's not me default going to, I bet they're scamming me. It's hey, what's going on outside of work? Like anything going on, and that's inhibiting your ability to do stuff. And then level setting expectations, like this is having a negative impact, so we need to talk. And then this other situation of essentially people getting in their own way because they're not reaching out for help. This is why, I don't know, like this kind of stuff is why when I talk through it, literally nothing I said had to do with writing code. I think I mentioned code review. Sorry, I lied. Most of what I said had nothing to do with writing code. But it's all software engineering stuff that comes up. And this is the kind of stuff that, like, in my career, like, I'm looking at this stuff nonstop. It's different things like this that when we put time and energy into them, we can find ways to make individuals and therefore teams more effective. So I hope that, like, when I'm talking through this stuff, I've said this, I got to say it more, I think, but my goal is not to tell you, like, this is my experience, therefore this is the way it is. The goal when I talk to you about this stuff is that you can see a perspective that you might not have had. Whether or not you agree with it is a different story, because you're absolutely able to live a completely different experience than me. And I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for living that experience. This is my experience. That's why I share it. And I hope that when you hear this kind of stuff, again, it's not like, oh, well, let me copy what's being done here, word for word, action for action. But what I would like you to do is to be able to think about what the perspective was, what the actions were, why they were taken, understand. Like, hopefully I'm articulating why certain things. And that way, if you come across similar things in your journey, you can be better equipped to say, hey, like, I've heard, at least I have some thoughts around this now. I tried, maybe you tried it your way and it didn't work. You try it my way, it does. Or the other way around. You're like, hey, Nick talked about this. Let's try it this way. Hey, that didn't work. Okay, like, cool. Like, I'm not promising you everything I say is going to work, right? These are my experiences, but having exposure to different perspective and experiences, I feel like allows you to create, better opportunities at least. So that's my goal when I share this stuff with you. It seems like folks are appreciating it at least. I've been kind of joking. Well, part of it feels funny, part of it feels kind of bad. Like, this channel is crushing my main channel. I have less than 10% of the subscribers on this channel compared to my main one. And this channel now gets more watch time per month with less than 10% of the subscribers, which is nuts. So this one's working, I guess. Oh, I can't see anything. Backing into this spot at night in the rain when there's a car coming down the road. Man, we got to get the TT out. It's the wife's SUV. We've been in there together, right? Depending on which videos you've watched. But we haven't been in the TT together yet, so we got to get that fixed up. But when we do, oh man, you're going to like it. You're going to like it. It's loud. And it's not the exhaust, it's the turbo. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you later. Take care.